Okay, that's it. So I'm going to cruise the entire length of the Hyperloop.
Hey folks, this is Fred. I was hearing a report on the Hyperloop. I mean, what happens when all of a sudden an earthquake hits? There's no way out. There's no need of hollering and screaming and yelling. You're in a more or less a coffin already. So your fate is sealed.
So far, none of the tubes that they've created have dealt with the expansion issue in any way whatsoever, or just simply an earthquake. Hell, a car crash into one of the pillars, any slight dent in that wafer-thin tube, and you would be looking at a cascade failure.
This is so unsafe. I mean, we as a people have done so many unsafe things, and we continue to do it. We continue to put people's lives at stake for the sake of the dollar bill.
I mean, the first thing we should assume is that we are very dumb. You know, things have obviously gotten way more smarter than the past, way smarter. The most important thing, like I said, the most important mistake I see smart people making is assuming that they're smart. They're not.
Yep.
Don't buy into the Hyperloop. It is a disaster waiting to happen. You may as well strap a bomb to your chest and pull the pin. If you got money to spend, spend it on something that's actually gonna help somebody to get better in life, not to get dead.
You played Fallout 3 all the way, like, I really played that game a lot. I think I explored every corner of that game.
I'm looking for a new video game to play. Can you give me a recommendation?
Overwatch.
I play Overwatch.
Yeah, it's
Anything
great.
else? Overwatch is amazing.
Overwatch is amazing, yeah.
And I was worried about him because he's one of our great geniuses, and we have to protect our genius. You know, we have to protect Thomas Edison, and we have to protect all of these people that came up with originally the light bulb and the wheel and all of these things. And he's one of our very smart people, and we want to cherish those people.
I think he's like remapping civilization and trying to make a better yacht.
I played, obviously, Skyrim. I did not complete Skyrim. That was intense. I was like, it's a big game. Played Fallout 4. That was great.
You have to give him credit. I spoke to him very recently, and he's also doing the rockets. He likes rockets, and he does good at rockets, too, by the way. I never saw where the engines come down with no wings, no anything, and they're landing. I said, I've never seen that before.
You know, just like Shaquille O'Neal is 8 feet tall, and some people are 4 feet tall. You know, some people just have a brain. I mean, there's no level playing field when it comes to anything, whether it's athletic performance or mental performance.
Well, there's Hearthstone.
I haven't tried that one yet.
Yeah.
I know people love it.
Do you play anything besides Overwatch? I mean, have you tried the new Deus Ex?
I have tried the new Deus Ex.
It's okay, but like
the best game I played recently, and it's not a super new game, is The Last of Us.
Oh, is it really?
It's from a couple of years ago.
Sure.
I loved it.
Okay, Last of Us.
Yeah.
You like that too? Is it really good?
Uncharted too.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Uncharted.
It was just
Really, The Last of Us
storytelling like that in
the prior Deus Ex and the original Deus Ex was, the storytelling was amazing.
Shocking how well, you know, how it's come so fast. I mean, you go back a year and they were talking about the end of the company, and now all of a sudden they're talking about these great things. He's going to be building a very big plant in the United States. He has to, because we help him, so he has to help us.
I don't know if anybody's played, did you play the original Deus Ex? That was killer.
Dun, 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 dun.
An electric skate was supposed to help center the car. That was axed in favor of retractable wheels, but both ideas have been abandoned, and instead the vehicle will rely on its own tires, driving through a paved tunnel.
'Cause, let's be real, you want to get people to drive around and round a kilometre-long tube with very small tolerances, leading to the obvious question, is it even possible to get out of those cars while you're in this Elon Musk loop? And, as is usually the requirement, even for people with limited mobility.
Another way to cut costs is by building smaller tunnels. The standard size for a single lane is 28 feet in diameter. Borings will only be 12 feet, which doesn't leave a lot of room, so although technically any electric vehicle with autonomous capabilities will be able to use them in the future, they'll have to fit.
Tiny, inaccessible tunnels going all over the city, which if there's an accident in them, which is inevitably going to happen, how are you going to unblock this again?
It seems like the people crying debunked are assuming that all of the scientists and engineers at SpaceX and all these universities haven't taken a grade 11 physics course.
Okay, and I'm not an expert in battery pack technology, but it seems that a lot of people are speculating that the specs for the semi-truck, even I believe the CEO of Daimler said it breaks the laws of physics. So I'm wondering, is this just a linear...
He doesn't know much about physics. I know him.
Yeah, so...
I'd be happy to engage in a physics discussion with him. I actually studied physics in college. We'll have a lot of flights between now and then.
That's crazy. That's 2023 is not that far away. That'll be there before you know it. How many times have you had explosions with those
When you're on a
things?
rocket? I don't know, quite a few. 6, maybe 5 or 6.
What are those like? What is it like when you watch it explode?
This is a test program.
Right.
We expect it to explode.
Of course.
It's weird if it doesn't explode, frankly.
Really?
Yeah. If current trends continue, if we accelerate, if you plot the points on the curve of progress, then we should be doing regular orbital flights with a high probability of safe landing in 2 years.
He's creating. He's a force in society that's like a cross pollination of Thomas Edison and Tony Stark from the Avengers. Okay, you cross pollinate those two folks, you get Elon Musk.
When do I think we can go to Mars? I mean, I think possibly as soon as 5 years from now.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you were talking to Elon Musk, did you get the sense that you were talking to like a genius? What did it feel like?
Like I'm a chimp.
I'm
a chimp.
Like you're that person.
Yeah, I'm that. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I am that toxically stupid person talking to this guy
Really?
who wants to create gigantic power stations in Australia to fix their grid and wants to shoot rockets into space. And
Anything he does is completely fascinating to people.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. I mean, legitimate. Like when he's not full shit. That is his thought process is extraordinary. But one of the things that was really clear from talking to him was that it's uncomfortable. That his whole life it's been this tornado of ideas that's beating against his head.
Yeah.
And he's like, you wouldn't want to be me. Like, oh Jesus. I'm like, what do you mean, man? He's like, it never shuts off.
Right.
And like, oh.
No. I think the paper's too strong.
Is there another way we can engineer?
It's better if I can swing like that.
Oh, good. So get it near my neck. That's even better. Wait! Don't go in that way. Don't go in that way. Go away from me.
This is crazy.
Both in our personal lives and in our political lives, both individually and when you scale it up and speak on the level of the community, the neighborhood, the city, the nation. We make decisions in the shadow of a million options we never truly gave consideration to because we presumed them to be impossible. The distinction between the possible and the impossible is thus of paramount political and emotional significance in our lives. What most people never learn to do is to think through in a systematic way a series of comparable options and alternatives. to move past the simplistic notion of impossibility in their heads to instead have a nuanced sense of the advantages and disadvantages of each possibility. Now, when you look at a towering, tyrannical, over-the-top figure like Elon Musk, you are talking about possibility and impossibility in a very crude sense. But nevertheless, we all have something to learn and something to reflect on, again, even in our own lives, personally, in moving past a simple sense of this is impossible. Now, to have one spaceship move back and forth between the Earth and Mars hundreds of times or 1,000 times, and to carry a small number of people between Earth and Mars on each trip would have a cost in the trillions of dollars. The numbers being dealt with are almost impossible to imagine. Almost impossible to imagine, but it doesn't mean it's impossible to do. That's not what Elon Musk is promising. What Elon Musk is promising is that he will build 1,000 ships that will make the trip simultaneously in an armada. So the number of trillions of dollars is here increased by more than 1,000-fold. The costs are astronomically higher. Now, let's just say you picture your entire family, your circle of all your friends and relations, everyone you know and care about in the city you're living in. And let's just say you learned that due to global warming, your city was going to be underwater. So you all have to move to some other, let's say you have to move to an empty field up in the mountains somewhere on higher ground. Say, okay, there are two ways I can do this. I can rent one bus and have a bus make a trip back and forth again and again over months. Or can have 1,000 buses. We're going to rent 1,000 buses simultaneously. We're all going to get loaded up together at the same time and move from one location to another. Which one is going to cost more money? Now, when we're dealing with space travel, when we're dealing with the cost of taking things from the surface of planet Earth and lifting them into orbit, just as step one. So this is not just the metal that the devices are made out of. Every pound and every ounce costs an enormous amount of money in jet fuel to elevate out of the Earth's atmosphere, but all of the water people are going to drink, all the food they're going to eat, all right, it gets ridiculous. It's much, much, much more difficult than planning a bus trip. But nevertheless, you can understand the difference between having one bus go back and forth in a bus trip and 1,000 buses going simultaneously. Now, if somebody said to you that building a city at the bottom of the ocean encased in a glass bubble is impossible, you could very easily in this context say, no, it's not. That's not impossible at all. But we get into some really interesting and challenging questions on this scale of magnitude when we're thinking about possibility and impossibility, the political costs and economic consequences. If you build a city at the bottom of the ocean, encased in a glass bubble, it probably has absolutely zero scientific value, nearly zero economic value, it has some tourist value. Some people are going to pay to go down in a submarine or something for the novelty of it. One could say much the same as much of the space program, frankly. If you start to estimate the costs of doing that, they are so much lower than sending just one team of human beings to Mars to live permanently on a space station Mars. Maybe even if just one person or two people living on a permanent, base on Mars, that it starts to seem like the easiest thing in the world. Now, what are the advantages of being at the bottom of the ocean? Well, you have access to hospitals. Like if someone gets sick while they're in this little bubble at the bottom of the ocean, you can put them on a submarine, bring them to the nearest city. Or you could take a doctor from the nearest city, put him on a submarine, send him to the bubble. Wow, what a cost savings. They have access to air. Oh, you might think air is hard to get at the bottom of the ocean. Try getting air on Mars. Okay, try getting air in Earth orbit. Okay, it's quite easy to bring air to the bottom of the ocean. It's quite easy to bring food. It's quite easy to bring potable water or to convert. And you have gravity. In fact, the advantages you have of having a colony, so to speak, at the bottom of the ocean over building a colony on the surface of Mars or the surface of the moon are so extreme. The number of trillions of dollars you would save, it's so radical that you can also make a kind of moral case for this. You can say morally, ethically, it's superior to build a city in a plastic bubble or a glass bubble, however you want to think of it, a translucent bubble at the bottom of the ocean. This is like a moral cause we should support, and we should stop fantasizing about or wasting billions and trillions of dollars on the possibility of lunar bases, orbital bases, permanent cities in orbit, and building a colony on Mars. So that's how much the cost savings is. There's a civil war in Myanmar right now. Some people want democracy, and some people don't. How much would it cost to build an earthly paradise in Myanmar compared to building a city encased in glass at the bottom of the ocean, an orbital platform with 1 million people living on it permanently, a colony on the surface of Mars, a permanently inhabited moon base? How much would it cost to raise the standard of living in each and every town in Myanmar to be equal to Disneyland, California? Let's really set our sights high and let's do a cost estimate where the quality of public bathrooms and schools and roads and democracy is better than Anaheim, California. It's not. Perhaps not paradise. perhaps 20% better than Anaheim would qualify as paradise. And let's throw in some rides. Every single town has got to have at least a flume ride or a Ferris wheel. We can do cost estimates. How much does it cost to have 10,000 Ferris wheels for Myanmar? Okay. That may sound ridiculous. That may sound like a waste of money. You say the Burmese people don't need Ferris wheels. They need democracy. I say unto you, these things go hand in hand. They need Ferris wheels and they need wave pools. I can't even think of other examples. They need roller coasters, whatever. I never go to Disneyland or these kind of places. It's not my thing. Right? If you say we are going to attempt the Disneylandification of Myanmar and you come up with a cost estimate, it's going to seem cheap compared to the space program. It's going to seem cheap compared to building a base on the bottom of the ocean. And you can already imagine why. I've sketched out some of these demographic factors, and it will have tremendous positive knock-on effects here on planet Earth. Now, nobody is talking about building Ferris wheels in Myanmar. Nobody is talking about building paradise in Myanmar. No one is talking about life in Myanmar being potentially better than life in Anaheim, California. Nobody even thinks it's possible. And we live our lives personally, professionally, emotionally, and politically within a cage of what we perceive to be possible and what we presume to be impossible. I can't count how many people I've spoken to who said to me that they'd like to learn Sanskrit, but it's impossible. And I got to sit them down and talk them through exactly how possible it is. Right? Whether it's Sanskrit or it's Pali or it's Latin or it's ancient Greek. And most of the time when you're talking to someone face to face, you can find some other activity they're doing in their life that takes up about this much time. Say, oh, do you go to the gym? When do you go to the gym every day? Oh, okay, really? So that adds up to 15 hours a week? Okay, guess what? The same amount of time you're spending at the gym now, you could be learning Latin, you could be learning ancient Greek, you could be learning Sanskrit, Pali, whatever the language is talking about. And I'm in a position, I have enough experience, I can talk them through exactly what that's like, exactly what is attainable and what's unattainable, and how much help you need, or to what extent you can just do it with your own mobile phone, to what extent you can do it just with applications downloaded from the internet and the dictionaries you need to get. I can really give someone valuable advice on those steps if they want to do it. But you know what changes when you realize it's possible? Guilt, shame, responsibility. Because now you realize it's been possible all along, and your concept of what's possible and impossible has been an excuse. It's an excuse you've been hiding behind, and it's even a mask you've been wearing that kind of prevents you from seeing reality around you in all of its detail. It's a mask that kind of cuts off your view of the full range of options and possibilities in your life. And you've been wearing it for all these years, right? And now you have to face up to what's possible. And the only thing lacking in the equation is you, your effort, your will, your resolution, your decision, your willingness to make it happen, right? Now, most, futurology, most talking about like what's attainable in our glorious, unthought of future has a lot more to do with the self-indulgent fantasies of Elon Musk than it has to do with the study of Latin or Sanskrit or Pali or Chinese or any other language, right? It's tragic. What the fantasies tell us a great deal about human nature, and one of the most central aspects of human nature is, after all, laziness. That's really what we're all struggling against here. Yes, wouldn't it be nice if someone else went ahead and made a colony on Mars for us to, sit back and enjoy? And nobody's interested. Oh yes, wouldn't it be wonderful if Elon Musk gets to live out his dream of farming corn on the surface of Mars? And they're not interested in the fact that Mars has not only no atmosphere to grow corn, no soil to grow corn, no gravity to grow corn. It also doesn't have sunlight to grow. Like the most obvious thing. It would literally be easier to grow corn at the bottom of the ocean than to grow it on the surface of Mars. If you start with it. But okay, what a great fantasy. And then you never stop and look at your own life and think, I could have bought a farm. I could get land. I could take up farming as a hobby or as a career. I could go from having it as a hobby to it really taking over. I could have done something productive and creative and innovative, and I could have done something with my life. If I think that's heroic, this vision of going out to new frontiers and farming corn, what does that say about me, and what does that say about my life, and what I presume about what's possible for me? The one that comes up most often in Canadian politics. Okay, if we're keeping it all the way real, what comes up most often is weight loss. What comes up most often is exercise and physical self-transformation, because people are shallow. And people live with a million different excuses for why they can't lose weight, why they can't get in shape, why they can't change their diet, why they can't change their habits. And you live surrounded by people who have excuses for why they can never read a book that's in their first language. Like they speak English first language, there's some book, and it's like, dude, if you write it down, if you write it on a chalkboard, so you wake up in the morning every day, it reminds you to read this book, you're going to get it read. There are things people live with, the illusion that they're impossible and unattainable. But the one that comes up most often in this political context of the United States and Canada, genocide and the obligation so many of us feel to learn an indigenous language rather than just letting them go extinct. So if you're watching this and you're from England or something, if you're from Spain, from some other country, some other continent, you may not know what it's like to every day drive your car down a highway and have cities with unpronounceable place names in extinct languages or nearly extinct languages, or languages where you've never met anyone who can understand them or know what it means. I've actually been on, I studied Ojibwe and Cree. Sorry, I say it all the time. I primarily studied Cree. My program also contained the unit on Ojibwe. If I just say Cree, people don't know what language I'm talking about. So I normally say Cree and Ojibwe. I studied those languages at First Nations University, Canada. And several times I went on Wikipedia and other websites and I corrected the explanation for the name of a city or town in Canada. Maybe once it was a river, but normally it's a city or town that has one of these names. And the funniest thing was, they had sources. So they would have a wrong explanation for why the town was named what it was. And they'd have a footnote, it's the Wikipedia style. And I could click and I'd go and be able to find the book it was published in. There are people out there treating this. And I would provide a footnote. And I would actually name the pages of the dictionary. It's like, yeah. Oh, yes. Well, allow me to do the incredibly in-depth research of looking the word up in the dictionary. But, in Canada, almost nobody has access to a dictionary for Cree or Ojibwe. This is the level of ignorance, okay? People live their whole lives with the assumption that there is this process of genocide, there are these languages disappearing, and there is nothing we can do about it, that nobody can learn the language, not even the people who genetically are linked to that history. And the answer is no. You can learn Latin, you can learn Greek, you can learn Hebrew, you can do it. It's all up to you. This is not impossible, it's possible. What the part that's difficult is caring. The part that's difficult is having the will and the self-discipline and the commitment to do it. And, looking at the reality of Canada, the United States today, what if there aren't even 500 people? Let's be blunt. What if there aren't 500 white people willing to do the hard work to learn Cree, to learn Ojibwe, to learn any other indigenous language you can name? Do you think there are going to be 500 Chinese people who are going to do it? Do you think there are going to be 500 people at the Linguistic Research Institute in Africa? How about in France or Germany, right? And I'm saying white people, because people, none of us were born speaking Latin. Come up with an estimate of how many people are learning Latin, all right? Either this is possible or impossible, all right? If it's actually impossible, let's think through the implications of that. And if we can admit to ourselves that it's possible, let's really deal with the implications of the fact that nobody is doing it and nobody is going to do it, all right? In this way, the sense of shame, the sense of guilt, the sense of responsibility begins with an awareness that some alternate course of action is possible. Most Americans and most Canadians are resigned to the idea that our First Nations people, our Indigenous people, live in third world conditions. Oh yeah, they don't really have drinking water and electricity and roads the way we do because they live on these reservations that we kind of force them on. And this is just seen as normal, right? Yeah, I guess they kind of have a separate school system. And look, I know a lot more about this than the average person. I'm here putting on the voice of the average white Canadian or white American. Most people have never thought it through. If you ask a white American, oh yeah. You know how there are those African-American colleges and universities, the special black people, black power kind of college. What do you think the situation is for the Navajo? What do you think the situation is for the Inuit? What do you think the situation is for your own indigenous people? The vast majority of Americans will just be dumbfounded. They'll just say, I don't know. They'll just say, I have no idea. Are there universities for those people? Do those people have their own universities the same way black people, the same way African-American people? They do. Have you ever been tempted to enroll there yourself? How about, do you know anyone? Do you know any white people who wanted to compete to get into one of those colleges? Did your high school counselor encourage you to apply to it? Because they're across America, like geographically, they're spread out. I mean, I can say something similar for Canada, right? This is unthought of. Is it possible? Is it possible to provide our Indigenous people with world-class running water and electricity and internet connectivity and primary schools, high schools, and universities? Why don't you do a cost estimate of what it would take to raise the quality of life on Canada and America's Indian reservations, First Nations territories, whatever you want to say, to raise the quality of life there to be equivalent to Anaheim, California? What would it take to raise the quality of their high schools and their universities to be comparable to the University of California, Berkeley, to be the most prestigious, the most excellent universities in the United States of America and Canada? And you know what? You might have to make some people uncomfortable. You might have to go to some other universities and shut down some of their departments and say, no, we're closing down this department at this university in a big city, and we're going to take your professors and we're going to go make them live in the middle of nowhere because we don't want it to always be the middle of nowhere. We're actually going to reallocate resources, including human resources, and we are going to put you out on the frontier to do something new and bold and different. Oh, sorry, that fucks you. Oh, sorry, you find that depressing? You find that challenging? Would you rather go to Mars? Would you feel more pride tilling the soil of Mars or the surface of the moon? Oh, I'm sorry, you don't feel any sense of adventure or do something new? Yeah, you know what? There are First Nations people, there are Indigenous people out in remote areas of Montana and Western Ontario. And you know what? We're not going to accept the fact that they live in conditions that are worse than Myanmar. right now. We're not going to accept the fact that their status in this democracy is less democratic than the status of indigenous people in Myanmar. I defy you. Look it up. A totally racist colonialist system of government here in Canada that was never meant to represent or include indigenous people, and it still doesn't because we never reformed it. We never wrote a new constitution. We never came up with new electoral practices to include it. It's ridiculous. We have a worse than apartheid system of extinguishment towards our indigenous people. Oh, yeah, you know what? Some of the most pampered, comfortable people in all of Canada and all of the United States are probably going to have to pack up and go out to a new frontier, which is a lot more comfortable than living under a glass bubble at the bottom of the ocean or in a lunar colony on the moon or Mars. And they're going to have to learn to take pride in that and say, we are the generation that decided this is possible. This is our priority. It's necessary. It's happening now. The whole tide of history of these languages disappearing and our political leaders saying these people don't matter and they're going to be forgotten, we're going to turn it around. We're going to go in the other direction, even if it costs $1 trillion. Because if you look at the annual budget for NASA, if you look at the amount of money being wasted on NASA year after year after year, and you think, what if that budget was going into First Nations education, Indigenous people's education, and even Indigenous people's plumbing and electricity and some of those things that I've mentioned? What do you think the cumulative effect of that would be after just 10 years, after just 20 years? It would change everything. And it wouldn't just change things for Native Americans. It would change things for white Americans and black Americans and Hispanic Americans and everybody else, okay? And it has to start with a commitment, all right? In the same way that the absurd idea of building a city under a glass bottle at the bottom of the ocean, a glass bottle, that's a good way of putting it, at the bottom of the ocean, in the same way that that ridiculous idea starts to seem moral, starts to seem like a moral imperative when you compare it to the absurdity of Elon Musk's Mars colony, all right? In that same way, when you start to compare what the government actively is wasting billions of dollars on, like the bombardment of Afghanistan and Iraq and the space program and all these things, when you start to compare what the money could be spent on and what it is spent on to this possibility, all right, becomes necessary to make a commitment and say, you know what? Building a base on the moon sounds like fun. Sending another rover to explore Mars and map it and everyone, it sounds fun. But we have to make a commitment that we are not going to do that. We have to write it down in the Constitution or in the highest level of federal law that you got. We are going to make a commitment. No more money spent on Mars, no more money spent on the moon until our own indigenous people have caught up, until they have schools and roads and democracy every bit as good as Anaheim, California, or better. Hey, let's shoot for the moon. Let's not be satisfied with mediocrity. Let's actually try to build a utopia. Not in Myanmar. Right here in the United States and Canada. Let's ask ourselves, what would be possible? And let's push up right against those limits of what we presume to be impossible. With the white paper for the Hyperloop, so this is Elon Musk's big idea for a train, which is now being promoted on at least 3 continents. They have Hyperloop France, Hyperloop somewhere like Dubai, I forget, the Hyperloop Brazil, Hyperloop United States of America. So the number of and of course, the least impressive of all, Hyperloop Las Vegas, which is already opening and running. You know, so look, I don't think it takes a genius to look at that white paper and say, okay, first of all, if you have a tube with a partial vacuum, it was completely surreal to me. The minute I looked at that, I thought, how can you say it's an absolute vacuum? Why would anyone in their right mind promise that? This would be like a laboratory conditions vacuum. But okay, it's under a partial vacuum. Let's just pretend he wasn't promising the impossible there. Well,
you need the same seals, whether it's full or partial.
Well, okay, but the amount of energy and time you're going to need to pump out the air and achieve an absolute vacuum. I mean, this is huge. Okay, but okay, so you got a tube that's under a vacuum. The first disadvantage is you can only possibly have 1 train and 2 stops. Because if a door opens anywhere along the line, you can't have multiple trains stopping at multiple stops. So you're talking about something like a subway system that just connects 2 points. This is a huge, obvious shortcoming, never addressed by anyone, never recognized by Elon Musk. But then you've already mentioned this, but you mentioned the turbine. So you can have a turbine, which is fundamentally, you could say, churning air. It's chewing up and spitting out air. You want as much air pressure as possible for a turbine, in a sense. Turbine and zero pressure. And then also, not maglev. This is often not magnetic levitation, that it would float on the same principle as a hockey puck on an air hockey table. That there would be jets spitting air out into an absolute vacuum. So only science I've studied is political science. I'm looking at the first time. I had never heard Thunderfoot or anyone else criticize Elon Musk. I looked at the white paper out of pure ignorance and curiosity. Nobody had coached me. Nobody had whetted my skepticism. And I can see this is fundamentally incompetent and impossible. I don't know. You tell me, what does impossible mean anymore? Is this, I mean, do people who study journalism lack some kind of basis in the sciences that I've got? What's the explanation for this?
One of the biggest things right now is that the science editors of all the, like Space.com and Teslarati and all these guys, they got to step up their damn game, man, because they are just reciting garbage time and time again. It's all clickbait nonsense, and they don't seem to have the scientific literacy that it takes of. And like you said, you don't have a background in science, but you looked at that and you knew that it was not right? Maybe you didn't understand all the different ways it wasn't right, but right off the bat, like you said, you look at it and you go, that doesn't sound like it's going to work. Like, how are you going to take a 30-meter wide or 30-meter long cylinder running down a vacuum tube and bank that son of a bitch around a corner?
Yep.
I mean, it's going to be a really, really wide corner. But you're going to have the thing
while traveling faster than a jet. While traveling
Exactly.
faster, so what's the angle is the curve going to be? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah,
exactly. But it's going to be like a NASCAR track, right?
Yeah.
It's going to have to be, because I mean, otherwise your momentum's just going to be all wrong, and you're going to be throwing people into the wall. But for all of it, I mean, none of it made any sense. And I think one of the biggest things about Musk is that, okay, there's two examples now. He introduces a Hyperloop, he introduces the white paper, and then he says to the world, we're going to hold a competition. And this is the unwritten part, you're going to work this out for me, and I'm just going to keep the tech, but I'll give you the prize, right? That's basically the whole Hyperloop competition. He's doing the exact same thing right now with the carbon capture, because he doesn't know how to do in situ resources and fuel development on Mars. So he's offered this $100 million prize, which made all the media, and oh wow, isn't he wonderful, and he's doing this for the planet. No, son of a bitch is trying to get out the cheap way for somebody else to figure out how to make fuel on Mars for him, because he doesn't know how to do it, and Starship depends on it.
Hey folks, this is Fred. I was hearing a report on the Hyperloop. I mean, what happens when all of a sudden an earthquake hits? There's no way out. There's no need of hollering and screaming and yelling. You're in a more or less a coffin already. So your fate is sealed.
So far, none of the tubes that they've created have dealt with the expansion issue in any way whatsoever, or just simply an earthquake. Hell, a car crash into one of the pillars, any slight dent in that wafer-thin tube, and you would be looking at a cascade failure.
This is so unsafe. I mean, we as a people have done so many unsafe things, and we continue to do it. We continue to put people's lives at stake for the sake of the dollar bill.
I mean, the first thing we should assume is that we are very dumb. Things have obviously gotten way more smarter than the past, way smarter. The most important thing, like I said, the most important mistake I see smart people making is assuming that they're smart. They're not.
Yeah. Well, I think the other question here is the belief in genius. Now, I've known some people who were considered geniuses, who were especially brilliant in kind of one field or another. Oh, okay, let's name some names. Phyllis Granoff is supposed to be a genius in Sanskrit. I remember somebody said to me of her proudly, she's the only scholar who can sit down and read Sanskrit as casually as if she were reading the newspaper in English. She was considered a great genius. Let me tell you something. You can be talented in just one field, in just one area, like playing the guitar or playing the drums, and you can be a complete idiot in every other field. Phyllis Granoff, you're an idiot. I'm in a position to know. But, to get into the world of business, of investment, of the stock market and making money, there are a lot of ways to make money. And, very few of them really involve even the kind of narrow, focused intelligence that learning Sanskrit involves. I'm not overrating learning Sanskrit, by the way, guys. But, learning Sanskrit is more difficult than learning how to play chess. Let's put it that way. But, what is it about money? I think we should get into this a little bit. For me, you opened my eyes to the extent to which his involvement with online payment platforms, now called PayPal, wasn't even called PayPal then. This really was a kind of sham. Not to say that the business was a sham, but that the presentation of it to the press was a sham. But, so what if he got rich off of PayPal? Like, if even we take that as true, I think it's really worrying for our culture that we're ready to raise someone up and treat them as a genius because they happen to invest in a company like PayPal at the right time and make a lot of money out of it.
What a lot of people don't realize is that, when all somebody has to do for you to consider them to be a genius is for them to have 20 IQ points on you. Right? But a moron's got 20 IQ points on an idiot, right? It really breaks down to that most of the people, and people aren't even necessarily voluntarily idiots. They're just not schooled properly. They don't have the scientific literacy. They've got their own bias confirmations coming in from other idiots that are close to them, right? So if Musk can talk at a level that's above your head, it's no different than an ordinary person and a magician, right? They're showing you something that you can't understand, so you think that they got it all under control. And really, I think that's all that Musk does. If you listen to the way that he talks about one of his favorite things is instead of saying many times over, he'll say orders of magnitude, stuff like that. And people go, "Ooh, wow, like that's how a genius would talk." No, it's just a catchphrase that he's latched onto that he knows will make you think that way. That's all it is.
He's creating. He's a force in society that's like a cross-pollination of Thomas Edison and Tony Stark from the Avengers. Okay, you cross-pollinate those two folks, you get Elon Musk.
When do I think we can go to Mars? I mean, I think possibly as soon as 5 years from now.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you were talking to Elon Musk, did you get the sense that you were talking to like a genius? What did it feel like?
Like I'm a chimp.
Like
I'm
a
chimp.
Like you're that person.
Yeah, I'm that. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I am that toxically stupid person talking to this guy
Really?
who wants to create gigantic power stations in Australia to fix their grid and wants to shoot rockets into space. And
Anything he does is completely fascinating to people.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. I mean, legitimate. Like when he's not full shit. That is his thought process is extraordinary. But one of the things that was really clear from talking to him was that it's uncomfortable. That his whole life it's been this tornado of ideas that's beating against his head.
Yeah.
And he's like, you wouldn't want to be me. Like, oh Jesus. I'm like, what do you mean, man? He's like, it never shuts off.
Right.
And like, oh.
No. I think paper's too strong.
Is there another way we can engineer?
It's better if I can swing like this.
Oh, good. So get it near my neck. That's even better. Wait, don't go in that way. Don't go in that way. Go away from me.
This is crazy.
Many people in the audience who are listening to Joe Rogan, I think they can't imagine the difficulties involved with orbital space travel. Maybe I shouldn't even say orbital space travel. Orbit, let alone movements between Earth and the moon and Mars. Talk about orders of magnitude. Mars being several orders of magnitude more difficult than the near Earth orbit and more expensive and so on. But everybody listening to the Joe Rogan podcast has been on a train. You know, like most of these people have real life experience with subways and trains and getting around Las Vegas, Nevada. You know what I mean? Like, that's the part I don't get, is you're so willing to believe this guy has this brilliant new solution for things that you are familiar with and where you may know as much or more than Elon Musk.
One of the things that Musk kind of benefits from his North American audience is that they aren't familiar with high-speed rail. Europe has it, Asia has it, right? The Emirates have it, but there's no high-speed rail lines in North America. Yeah. They can't even figure that out. But Musk is saying that they're going to go LA to New York eventually in a vacuum tube that's moving at 800 miles an hour. It's like, okay, first off, we already know that the air skates are out and maglev is out so far as Musk is concerned, because he announced shortly after he made all those other announcements that he would probably have to advocate wheels for keeping them off of the ground, right? So as soon as
the press still reports maglev and still reports airlev, but yeah. So I'm just saying the opposite of what you're saying is still circulating in the press. Go on.
Exactly, but sometimes I almost wonder if Musk didn't announce Hyperloop to keep the engineers from Virgin busy while he was busy at SpaceX getting past them and getting the contracts for lunar landers and that kind of stuff, right? Because Musk isn't doing Hyperloop anymore, right? He's doing Boring Company, but Boring Company isn't Hyperloop, right? Hyperloop, if something's ever going to be Hyperloop, according to the white paper, it's going to be in a vacuum tube and it's going to be on air skates, period. If it's a maglev, whether it's a maglev on rails or a maglev on rails in a vacuum, it's still maglev. It's not a Hyperloop.
Yeah.
Right? So basically, as far as I can tell, Hyperloop's dead.
Yeah.
Right? They're not doing the competitions anymore, but like you said, it's still being reported in the press and the media that Elon Musk invented the Hyperloop, and anytime that there's a Hyperloop project, if it's in Dubai or wherever the next contract is, going to disappear from, they automatically associate Musk with that.
Yeah.
And what the hell has he done? Yeah. He hasn't done anything with it. He doesn't have a Hyperloop division.
Oh no, and they just opened a new test facility in Toulouse, France. So governments and private investors keep lining up to put money into Hyperloop, and they're going to have their test in 2025. They're going to be able to do a 1 mile test. I'm sorry, I forget if it was 1 mile or 1 kilometer in 2025. I mean, if you are interested in public transportation, there are people who build a whole train in 5 years, guys. That was announced in 2020. Okay, we're working up to have a test, and everyone's reporting this as genius and a scientific breakthrough and everything. Yeah, so no, he's still
but
really.
You saw the capsule, right? This is the Hyperloop 1 capsule. You saw that?
Right, but this is the one in France. As there is one in the American desert somewhere in Nevada or whatever. Yeah.
I think it's the one in France. I might be wrong.
Yeah, right.
But it was reportedly made out of vibranium. You know that?
That sounds like an accurate report.
Yeah. No. Anybody listening, Google this Hyperloop capsule vibranium. Yeah. You'll see that come up. It's like an empty Coke can that nobody was allowed to take cameras in because, of course, they don't have a means of propulsion. They don't have seats. They don't have a layout. It's kind of like a starship that way, right. Where you can see the outside but nothing on the inside. Yeah. Right? There is nothing on the inside. So yeah, no, people should do that. Just to kind of get caught up with how out of whack the media is from reality to what they're reporting, because there's a huge disconnect there.
You played Fallout 3 all the way, I really played that game a lot. I think I explored every corner of that game.
I'm looking for a new video game to play. Can you give me a recommendation?
Overwatch.
I play Overwatch.
Yeah, that's
Anything
great.
else? Overwatch is amazing.
Overwatch is amazing, yeah.
And I was worried about him because he's one of our great geniuses, and we have to protect our genius. We have to protect Thomas Edison, and We have to protect all of these people that came up with originally the light bulb and the wheel and all of these things. And he's one of our very smart people, and we want to cherish those people.
I think he's like remapping civilization and trying to make a better yacht.
I played obviously Skyrim. I did not complete Skyrim. That was intense. It was like it's a big game. Played Fallout 4. That was great.
You have to give him credit. I spoke to him very recently, and he's also doing the rockets. He likes rockets, and he does good at rockets, too, by the way. I never saw where the engines come down with no wings, no anything, and they're landing. I said, I've never seen that before.
You know, just like Shaquille O'Neal is 8 feet tall, and some people are 4 feet tall. You know, some people just have a brain. I mean, there's no level playing field when it comes to anything, whether it's athletic performance or mental performance.
Well, there's Hearthstone.
I haven't tried that one yet.
Yeah.
I know people love it.
Do you play anything besides Overwatch? I mean, have you tried the new Deus Ex?
I have tried the new Deus Ex.
It's okay, but like
the best game I played recently, and it's not a super new game, is The Last of Us.
Oh, is it really?
It's from a couple of years ago.
Sure.
I loved it.
Okay, Last of Us.
Yeah.
You like that too? Is it really good?
Uncharted too.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Uncharted.
I was just
really The Last of Us
storytelling
great,
like that in
the prior Deus Ex and the original Deus Ex was the storytelling was amazing.
Shocking how well, how it's come so fast. I mean, you go back a year and they were talking about the end of the company, and now all of a sudden they're talking about these great things. He's going to be building a very big plant in the United States. He has to, because we help him, so he has to help us.
I don't know if anybody's played. Did you play the original Deus Ex? That was killer.
He's not just milking this for positive and sympathetic support in the press. He's also milking it for millions of dollars in government support, government contracts, and private sector support, private sector investment. Yeah. So it's, morally, it's really different. Yeah, go on.
I got a great question for you and your listeners. And it's something that we posted on Twitter there the other day. So you've got Tesla, who was given $1 billion tax break in Nevada for their factory there. Buffalo, New York gave him another $1 billion. Well, they didn't give him $1 billion. They built $1 billion factory for Tesla, Giga 2. And that was in return for hiring commitments, which Musk has never honored and is looking for another deferral so that he doesn't have to pay $41 million a year in fines because he's not giving the area the jobs that he wanted. So you've got this company that is reliant on handouts that takes buyers' incentives off of, for every vehicle because the government's paying people to buy EVs, which is basically the poor taxpayer paying the difference for the rich taxpayer to get into a Model 3 or S or X or whatever. You've got government handing Musk money every which way, so far as Tesla is concerned. But Tesla is then allowed to turn around and sell green credits to Legacy Auto. Right. How the hell does that work?
Yeah, this is emissions trading. Yeah. So I just say, even back in 1997, when I was a university student in political science, I have always regarded emissions trading as a scam. I'm a pro-environmentalist person. I'm a vegan. I'm not a climate change denier or something. But no. That whole business of robbing Peter to pay Paul, or wherever you want to put it, this world of emissions trading, it's bizarre. And yes, one of the people who's profited most from it is Elon Musk. The idea that
Tesla's profit that they reported in Q1 didn't come from their selling of vehicles. It came from the selling of those credits and their profit they made on Bitcoin.
Right.
Like, they're losing money selling cars because they can still turn around and sell these credits and imaginary fiduciary tokens, for profit, which is, I don't know what your feelings about.
I'm just going to summarize to the audience briefly. So this is a bit like the Catholic Church selling condolences or the Catholic Church selling moral absolution to people. You have one company in one place that is polluting, and they say, okay, we will pollute less, and then we will sell the token, we will sell the credit, we'll sell this imaginary, permission slip to another company who will then pollute more, or they'll continue polluting at the same levels. So there definitely were examples in Africa. I never found an example like this from Thailand or Laos or Cambodia, but they may well exist there. They just haven't been fully documented. But there were examples in Africa where you'd have a factory, and it could be a noodle factory. Like, it doesn't have to be really that big and heavy a business or industry. And sometimes they would just shut down. They would say, okay, we're going to shut down for 6 months. So we're not we're not burning so much coal or producing so much smoke anymore. And so now we have so many tokens to sell to other companies and profit from. So it can really be as simple as that. But yeah, it's bad in theory and worse in practice. And it really emerged from the strange optimism of a bygone era of Bill Clinton political science, I'd say. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
So far as the tokens go, that would be great if the company was actually a private company that wasn't relying on the taxpayers to subsidize everything that they're doing. And it's the same thing at SpaceX, right? Everybody thinks that SpaceX is a private space company and completely ignores
it's taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, it's about $10 billion that he's gotten from NASA, so we're in that neighborhood, right? And yet Crew Dragon was 4 years late, and I mean, what they're doing right now down at Boca Chica is an absolute disaster ecologically, and I mean, they're operating outside of what Texas even allows them with their conversion of state law. They actually changed Texas state law to allow Musk to launch 12 Dragons a year, from Monday to Friday, 7 to 7, nothing on weekends, but Dragons, right?
Right.
Falcons, Falcons 9s, maybe Falcon Heavies. This predates Starship, right? So nothing in Texas state law allows Musk to launch Starships for Boca Chica. Never mind destructively testing them.
Right.
Right. So I mean, he takes, and nobody realizes how much he's taking or where he's taking it from.
Well, I'd mention this because this might be something you look into or hear about sooner or later. But to my knowledge, the only government that stood up to Musk is China. Everyone else just wants to embrace him and encourage him, whether it's the American government or the French government, whatever. Nobody has any hard words for him. But
Germany has got some problems with them there now, right?
So that's so some department of the German government is saying the numbers don't add up or something. Yeah. Okay, go on. I want to hear about this.
Gigafactory Berlin, that area, first off, they had to level a growth forest, right? It had some protected species in it, and they had to wait for them to come out of hibernation before they could relocate them, that kind of thing. But there is a water allowance that the factory was given, and apparently that water allowance, once the factory is up and running, is going to be blown right through. Like what was supposed to be the max that the factory used is probably going to be the minimum that the factory is going to use. So that's going to result in a water shortage there. And then there's different environmental things that have come to light recently where inspectors have come across pipes that were underneath the factory for dispensing waste that were not on anybody's diagram. Nobody knew anything about them. And then what are some of the other things? The union busting activities that Musk is famous for. Apparently, he's under investigation right now for paying his workforce less than the mandatory minimum wage. There's all sorts of different things
the investigation
in Germany.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's half a dozen different investigations going on for Gigafactory Berlin right now. But again, here's something else that people don't realize. Gigafactory Berlin is being built on land that they made Tesla buy, where, I mean, the one in China just owns. That whole factory is owned by China. But it's being built on all conditional permits, right? So if at the end of the day, the final inspectors come in to give final approval and they don't like what they see, Tesla has to bulldoze the factory and reconstitute the land to the way it was before.
Right.
And right now, they're buggering everything up.
Yeah. And the Germans take those things very seriously. I mean, it is not a case where they're going to be able to appeal to German parliament to make an exception in their case, I would expect.
It's going to be a red light, a green light, and that's that.
Well, China is not a democracy, But on a scale of 1 to 10, they're not quite a 0 for democracy. There may be a 1 out of 10. There's a little bit of democracy, you know. And there was a lot of suspicion and hostility toward Tesla in China in the millionaire class. Now, this may shock you, but the Chinese government is actually somewhat influenced by the opinions of multimillionaires in their country. There is, you know, I'm just saying there's no democracy, but, you know, these are some of the same people that eat lunch together. And, you know, what exactly China's problem with Musk and Tesla is, it's somewhat secret. But it does seem to be that one of their big concerns is actually the quality of the cars, is actually the reliability and so on. So it's kind of taboo everywhere except Consumer Reports. But I remember thinking, oh, isn't that interesting? And maybe China will be the one country that's really asking tough questions that nobody wants to ask about Elon Musk and Tesla.
Well, if you talk to Tesla shareholders, again, they're under the impression that Musk owns that factory, and that's why they're showing a loss. Is because they're doing all this expansionist activity, and I mean that's just nonsense. The factory itself was built by China. The gear on the inside, all the factory equipment, it was bought by China. Yeah. Well, China holds the loans against it. Right, Musk had to take out loans with the Chinese government to outfit those factories. Yeah. Right, so China's got an image problem with Tesla right now. As a matter of fact, Teslas at this point aren't allowed in some parking garages. They aren't allowed on some city highways that are toll highways. And this all comes down from, well, some of it comes down from that auto show outburst where that lady got up on stage and started screaming about the problems that she was having with her car. But I mean, it goes a lot deeper than just that.
I'll give you one you might not know. There was a multimillionaire in China, and I think he was the first man in China to receive a Tesla. But if not, he was one of the very first. And he very publicly smashed his Tesla to bits with a crowbar. Now, to the limit of his strength. And that was on video, and that was in the news there. And yeah, it was an interesting moment. Now, political relations between the United States and China were much more positive then than they are now. Since then, Donald Trump came and went, and now Joe Biden. Joe Biden is more anti-China than Trump was, to everyone's surprise. And really, supply chain and economic relations in the United States and China may now really break down. Elon Musk may end up losing his investment in China for reasons unrelated to his incompetence. But I would say, because I've lived in China in the past. I read and write Chinese and so on. But actually, that moment of this guy smashing his Tesla with a crowbar in China and saying it wasn't even that he was complaining so much that it was a worthless piece of junk. He was complaining that Elon Musk was arrogant and that the Tesla Corporation was, which I think is a reasonable complaint. But arrogance carries a lot of weight there. I would say that was maybe the iconic moment that formed China's idea of Tesla. I mentioned this because that went viral in China, but I think people outside of China didn't see that clip. Disgruntled owner smashes his Tesla to pieces with crowbar.
I'm amazed that nobody at our channel has seen that. That would definitely have been brought up at the kitchen table conversation.
I'm here to share. Another question is, what happened to that car after he smashed it up, though? Did he then turn around and sell it secondhand? That's also I mean, after you've gotten the viral video, what do you do with the smashed up Tesla sitting in your driveway? Are you that rich that you just literally throw it in the garbage? I don't know. You might have cleaned it up and sold it secondhand after. I just putting myself in his position.
It seems like the people crying debunked are assuming that all of the scientists and engineers at SpaceX and all these universities haven't taken a grade 11 physics course.
Okay, and I'm not an expert in battery pack technology, but it seems that a lot of people are speculating that the specs for the semi-truck, even I believe the CEO of Daimler said it breaks the laws of physics. So I'm wondering, is this just a linear...
He doesn't know much about physics. I know him. I'd be happy to engage in a physics discussion with him. I actually studied physics in college.
So look, I want to ask you a bit of a broader question. I think you, to some extent, have kind of one foot or one toe into the space industry. We're not going to disclose anything about you, but you often kind of speak in the first person plural about people who are involved in the real nuts and bolts of putting things into orbit and coping with the enormous costs thereof. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
I think we're living in a very interesting era in terms of the justifications for these enormous budgets. I have to tell you, I am not uncomfortable with private companies in general receiving millions of dollars from the government. I have my own kind of pragmatic, nihilist, nuanced view of how politics works. But most things that the public perceives as public sector, as being part of the government's domain, actually are contracted out to private companies to create. And of course, this includes component by component, the pieces that make up the International Space Station and everything else. As coronavirus comes to an end, though, all of the Western democracies are now kind of teetering on the bridge of bankruptcy, of deficit spending at enormous levels. And there is starting to be an odious question of really how much of taxpayers' money is it appropriate to put into the pockets of people like Elon Musk and to put into the pockets of, what are some other aerospace corporations here? Put into the pockets of...
like Boeing and ULA and Blue Origin.
Right. The so-called, path breakers for people pushing back the horizon of new technology, so on and so forth. And they're incredibly lazy, stupid, fatuous investors who get rich off it, people like Elon Musk who are less famous than Elon Musk. I think, we're probably coming up to an era when there's going to be more skepticism and more hostility towards space travel, space programs, or what have you, and people are going to have to question. Just a personal anecdote, I remember sitting at a table with a relative who was questioning me about how much money the building the wall cost, Donald Trump's wall with Mexico. And I had the figures fresh in my mind right there. And I said, okay, so what percentage of NASA's annual budget is that? And when you start looking at the space program compared to anything else you say the government doesn't have money for, whether it's building a wall or providing schools or providing pipes that don't have lead in them for drinking water or what have you, we have a bit of an embarrassment of riches. And we have a question of poverty and scarcity. Where do you see that going? And I ask this partly because I really think Elon Musk himself could be a bit of a turning point in this.
Here's the way that we kind of approach this is that anything that is going to be developed or shone light on that embarrasses space exploration is going to have a negative effect overall. Okay, so not only with what's happening at Boca Chica, is that a bunch of money going to one company where there could be 10 other doles out to smaller companies that might have better ideas, that might have better technology, that just need that lab to make that happen. I think that centralization of the way the disbursements go acts negatively. However, beyond that, if Starship on one of these upcoming launches gets out of control. Let's say when they launched the booster on July 1st as the intended date, it winds up going into La Padre and wipes out a small neighborhood, that kind of thing. As soon as Starship kills somebody, people are going to get shut right off of that entire aspect of space exploration and the way that it's being done. It's reckless. What they're doing down at Boca Chica right now is reckless. They got lucky yesterday. They had 4 other accidents. Those accidents littered 3 nature preserves with razor sharp stainless steel shrapnel. You're talking a state park to the west. To the south, you've got another protected wetland. To the east of Boca Chica, you've got a turtle beach that's used by like 6 different species of endangered turtles. They get blown up every time a Starship is a fireball, right? And people will say, okay, but like around Cape Canaveral, there's a nature preserve there too. Why aren't you bitching about that? Because these nature preserves were there first. He built in the middle of a nature preserve where, at Kennedy, they built the launch platforms and they built a nature preserve around it. So, apples and oranges.
Yeah, but there's also the old saying about you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. And, I mean, the American public's attitude towards loss of human lives and loss of billions of dollars, I think those are two very different things. We were watching the promo clip. I say we. In reality, I was yelling at my girlfriend about how ridiculous this was for the latest project from the multimillionaire owner of Virgin. This is Virgin Galactic. So, I'm sorry, I forget the guy's name now. Richard Branson or something like that. Right? There you go. So, and one of the things I was yelling at my girlfriends, it's participatory yelling. It's not actually an argument or a fight, was that, it's inevitable that one of these is going to blow up and all the passengers are going to die. Like, you can really chart out how much time it is. So, you're talking about sinking millions of dollars into adventure tourism. And, admittedly, every year people die doing parachuting, they die doing mountain climbing. There is risk built into tourism of different kinds. But in this case, people are investing in this as a business, as a for-profit proposition. And you tell me what the profitability outlook is, or what the value of that stock on the stock market is, the first time just one of those space exploration vehicles, shall we say, it's near Earth orbit, but the first time one of them burns up in orbit and everyone on board dies. If we're talking about money, I'm being honest with you, the American public, they have a tremendous tolerance for casualties. You can have dead bodies coming back from Afghanistan every week, and people seem to be cool. But if you're actually talking about this on a profit-making or even break-even basis, that's very hard for me to see people tolerating. Once just one of those flights goes badly.
Well, you take a look at what happened with the shuttles. Yeah. Right. There's one of them on the way up, one of them on the way down. But out of 135 missions, 133 were successful. So it had a 98.5% success rate, something in that neighborhood. Right. But each time something happened, it shut the program down for years. Right. Right. We're talking 30 months, 32 months, somewhere in that neighborhood. Right. Now you've got. There's certain things that are hinging on SpaceX right now, right? They had the lunar contract that's been shelved because Blue Origin has put in a complaint, and so did Dianetics, with the government over contract. SpaceX's favor from being in a third-rate position. But you take a look at the Crew Dragon, right? That program depends on SpaceX and NASA support to get North Americans up to the International Space Station. That's going to become more important once the Russians and Chinese have their own thing, because the Russians are abandoning the ISS, right? So how often are Soyuz going to be going to the ISS after the Russians are out of the ISS? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So our ability to get astronauts to orbit into the ISS right now is going to be completely dependent on Crew Dragon, or if Starliner can ever get up and running, right? But if there's a major catastrophe that SpaceX is involved with, then the company will get shut down, right? Because it's going to be a top-to-bottom forensic exercise into where the part that failed came from and what part was it. Because if they're modeling Starship after Falcon, which a lot of people say, like they're using the same thrusters and that kind of thing. Different materials, different engines, different fuel, but certain aspects that are familiar, right? But they're going to have to take the company apart, like they did for NASA, right. And when both of those shuttles failed. And at that point, do we lose our ability to get our own people to orbit?
Right. And also, do we lose our faith in the illusion that this is a for-profit company traded on the stock market? I'm sorry, I know it may be less serious, but politically that's also interesting. Like, we're all pretending this is a business, and to a large extent it's a government department,
Well, did you see the episode that we put together about Solar City?
Yes, yeah. I've seen pretty much everything.
Okay, so one of the things that we go into, one of the tangents that we go into is how SpaceX got the disbursement to create Crew Dragon, and the first thing they did with that money is they bought $255 million worth of Solar City bonds to keep Solar City afloat. Right? So even though that money was dedicated to the space program, it was a shell game. Right, because it was between SpaceX and Tesla and Solar City, and back and forth and back and forth. And the only way the money ever moved was in a way that benefited Musk.
Right. Yeah, his short-term self-interest was guiding these things. Yeah.
Exactly. And now in July 12th, 2021, he goes to court over that whole thing for the sale, whether or not it was a conflict of interest. And if anybody wants to look at it, it's in the Delaware Court of Chancery, and action number 12711 DCS, and it goes ahead July 12th. It was supposed to go ahead last month, but the legal team had to swap out.
If you look at the success of SpaceX just in bidding for government contracts, here basically meaning NASA, Do you have any explanation for that? Because, again, to allude to my parents' business, when my parents worked in museums, you could have a museum with $100 million budget. Like, the amount of money would be huge, but the amount of money my parents would get would be $10,000 or something. They get some little fragment of it. But they would be competing. If you're bidding for a role in planning or design, they'd be competing with the Walt Disney Company. There'd be all these corporations saying, "Oh, we want to design this museum. We want to do this. We want, and it includes decisions like what color you're going to paint the walls and stuff. It's really not that glamorous. Neither is space travel, by the way. I realize, but yeah. I don't want to do it myself. But when you look at their success in bidding, do you feel it's just the lack of alternatives? Do you think that SpaceX has been largely unchallenged? Or do you think the government agencies that are evaluating the bids and tender and so on, do you think that they are themselves influenced by the media hype, that they're believing in Elon Musk the same way the journalists do?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reality there. That people look at him and they see the reports that he's the founder of Tesla and it's Tesla's success, and he was the founder of PayPal. And of course, none of this is true, but people think that he is, and they think that he has this track record of establishing and building and selling and having successful companies. But it's always somebody else. He's always riding somebody else's shoulders. I mean, even at SpaceX, he's not the brains of the operation. He never has been. The rockets that he designed all blew up. But you take a look at Gwynne Shotwell and her history, and the fact that her husband works for one of the other space manufacturers. I think it's JPL. I'm not 100% sure without looking at it. But, he has rocket scientists. You don't know who they are because he never mentions them, and he takes all the credit for what they're doing. But when they move down the road, he's got to fill that gap. And if he's ever unable to fill that gap, then the whole shell game can fall apart, right? But so far as their success in getting the contracts, I think a lot of it comes down to spaghetti theory. I think when NASA has the budget to actually throw as much money out there to see what sticks as possible, that's what they tend to do. And of course, they were able to do that in the last administration because Trump wanted the Space Force, right? And now you've got a change in the guard, and they've got other concerns, and they're cutting back because they want more environmental and climate change monitoring and that kind of thing. So at that point, when the budget got reduced, somehow Musk knew to the dollar, just ahead of the 11th hour, what to bid for the HLS system. How he got that information is probably going to come up in that government inquiry that Blue Origin has just initiated.
Can we just measure that's what is HLS? I assume this is an orbital service.
Human land assisting on the moon.
Okay, so human land, getting humans onto the moon. Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah.
So they have this. They've got the three systems lined up. So you've got Dianetics, you've got Blue Origin, and both of those two have mock-ups of the interiors of their vehicles. I mean, Blue Origin 6 months ago delivered what their lunar lander was going to look like to NASA so that the astronauts who might be going on it could walk through it and sit in it and say, okay, this is great, but this display panel should be moved down here so that I can reach it, or this is better viewing, or whatever. So both the other two have that. SpaceX doesn't. SpaceX is the one who gets the contract when the budget gets reduced to the point where they can only send one. So there has to be some sort of inside operation there because, I mean, like I said, he knew to the dollar what to bid for that, right? The absolute last dollar. I think the figure ends in a 7. How do you put in a multi-billion-dollar contract that ends in a 7 unless you know exactly that it's supposed to be a 7?
It's very strange, these government bidding processes. And every so often there's a scandal about military equipment, of billions of dollars being wasted on some missile design or another and this kind of thing. You get 5 guys in suits and suspenders looking at these tender contracts and making these decisions. But the truth is, I think if we had a referendum on it, I think if we had more democracy, I think everyone would vote for Elon Musk to lead the project to land us on the moon. I'm just saying this is really, I'm pro-democracy, but it's very challenging for me to look at because I think this is, kind of the most sad and sick and wrong side of democracy. This is one of the greatest weaknesses in democracy as a political system and as a kind of cultural habit of mind. Oh, great. Oh, yeah, the guy I've seen on TV, the guy I've seen on the news, the guy who made millions of dollars out of PayPal, he must know a thing or two about lunar landings.
And that really is what it comes down to a lot of the time, right? It's just public exposure. Everybody sees him, or one of the worst things that has happened to the scientific community in the last 20 years is CGI.
Oh, right.
Because people think if they can make a CGI about it, and the CGI makes sense, that everything else is going to be great and wonderful, and it's just a matter of time before this, artificial vision is an actual vision. Right. And it's just, people need to be able to understand. One of the first things that they need to kind of wrap their brains around is just kind of, spatial awareness, right? Is the vessel that you're looking at physically capable of holding what people are saying is going to go inside of it? And in the case of Starship, as we've shown in several of our different episodes, it's simply not capable of holding what Musk says it's going to. The refueling process that he's outlined, where he's just going to slosh fuel between one vessel and another and load up a Starship, and away they go, and they're going to send the Japanese billionaire off to the moon on the Dear Moon exercise. Well, he's got 19 months to pull that together. Not just the ship, not just the launching, not just the booster, but also the refueling and the reentry back to Earth. Because a lunar system of Starship, even the way it's designed, if it's designed perfectly the way that Musk says it was, isn't capable of re-landing back on Earth. Yeah. So how are the 12 people coming down? Nobody thinks about this. It's almost like there's nobody at SpaceX that's working logistics.
Well, I put it this way too, though. In terms of education, everyone seems to be willing to accept that Elon Musk has a BA in physics, and that covers it. He's mentioned that, I studied physics in university. You've heard him say this. Now, let me just say, you personally could probably design an exam to ascertain whether or not someone has the minimum requisite knowledge of physics, and to some extent engineering, to make a decision on this kind of contract. If you
test for that or something.
Right, no, but this is kind of a challenge. I think all democracies have to start to face up to. In the United States of America, if I want to give advice on buying and selling stocks on the stock market, I have to write an exam, Series 65, Series 66 exam by FINRA. So there is an exam, and if you've written that exam, you get to say, yeah, I'm qualified to give advice on what you should buy in the stock market. And there's another one called the CFA, and I say, yeah, I'm now a qualified analyst. I can give you my analysis of what's going on in the stock market. There is almost no other field in the United States of America that has this.
Yeah, you can go to the other end of that, though, and say, even beauticians need a license. A dog groomer needs a license, right? But people call him an engineer, right? And he's not. He's got no engineering qualifications. He's got no higher authority saying that he's an engineer.
I challenge you in the audience, Google this. Do dog groomers need a license where you live? I think this changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But, everything would change if the people who have to make decisions about sewage treatment and drinkable water, so, there was this big scandal in the state of Michigan, Flint, Michigan, about this. If the people who made decisions or who voted or who even talked about this on behalf of the government, if you had to pass an exam saying, yes, I am fundamentally competent in understanding how a hospital works, which is not the same as being a surgeon. Like, I understand hospital management. So, and now that I've studied for that and written my exam, here's what I have to say about what's wrong with the hospital system. I fundamentally understand physics and engineering as it applies to space travel. The problem, from my perspective, isn't just that Elon Musk lacks that competence. I think the people who sat in that room and made the decision that he should win the contract, I think probably they also lack this. Maybe some of them, but maybe all of them. You could be looking at people who have a distinguished military career in aerospace and who end up being in NASA or being the representative of, Congress to NASA, the people who are actually making that decision, or various political appointments, who may be highly competent at something, but they lack the ability to see these problems that are so obvious to you and I in looking at Elon Musk's grandiose plans for the future.
Did you actually see the news release that was released about Musk getting that award? Because it's written in the first person. I found that very, very interesting, is that everything is I and me and...
So this was an official press release from SpaceX. But,
yeah, it's like, well, no, it's from NASA.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, in the first person. Okay, wow.
And the person who released it, it's a lady whose name I can't remember right now. Everything's written in the first person about how I determined, and this is my recommendation, and it's almost like there wasn't a committee,
right?
And that this deputy head of Human Launch Services or something like that, again, right. I don't have that detail in front of me. Of course, I'm going to look it up as soon as we're off here. It's almost like she had to get that out of the way before the new administrator taking over from Jim Bridenstine took over.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they were anxious to get that done before this new person could come in. And of course, now that Blue Origin and Dianetics has put in their challenges, it all gets
it's very
put in the penalty box anyway.
It's very often the case. I mean, basically one man designed the healthcare system that we have in Canada. Back in 2008, China, with over 1 billion people, completely redesigned their healthcare system. Good luck finding anything written in English about what happened and whether it was good or bad. But I mean, political decisions with really sweeping, profound, long-term consequences, maybe on paper they're made by a committee of 5 people, but there was really one person who dominated that committee. You know what I mean? Like when you look into these things, and how many people decided the strategy for the Americans conquering Vietnam, or whether or not America should go to war in Vietnam. Big decisions that have really long-term consequences. One I've been drawing attention to actually was the 1971 war, where Richard Nixon decided to have an alliance with China, which continued till 2021. Huge long-term consequences. 5 guys in a room, and maybe just one of them, made this decision, and on what basis? And I've got to say, it's something that we so-called democracies in the West, we have a lot more in common with communist China than we want to admit to ourselves, because so many of these supposedly democratic things, especially in your field. Sorry, but any city in America, any city in Canada, was there anything democratic about the design of your subway system, of your train system? Anything like this? Suddenly democracy just stops, even though that's where things should be the most democratic of all, because it's going to affect, everyone's daily life for the next 50 years. Who builds the train and how?
Yep. And not just the construction, but construction noise, construction costs, the addition to your tax bill, the way it's going to come through your neighborhood, the way you're going to access that system. Is there going to be a stop anywhere near you? Yeah. I mean, what tends to happen is we elect these people to sit in dark rooms and come up with decisions on our behalf. And we think that because we elected them, that they're acting on our behalf.
Yeah. Or we elected the person who appointed them. We didn't even elect them. We elected someone else who selected them. Right. Yeah.
I think what a lot of it comes down to in Canada and in the U.S., like basically in any major democracy anymore, is that everything goes along party lines. And really, I think the only way that you're going to get back to a true democracy is by abolishing parties, so that your representatives, when they're sitting in Ottawa or sitting in Washington, they're actually acting on your best behalf and making alliances to, in the best interest of their area. And that way they're free to vote yes on this and no on that, and actually benefit the people who elected them to the office, not only in such a way that they get elected, but they can be recalled if they're no longer acting in our best interest. And we don't need one person at the top of it to kibosh or veto anything that they don't agree with. What we need is a figurehead that can attend all the soirees, the UN, and the dinner parties and whatnot. But there's no reason why the people that are in representative rooms, whether it's the House of Congress or House of Commons, why they can't elect a representative to act in that regard. And again, if that person is not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, then they get recalled and they have another election. Like, I honestly think that the polarization that's happening in politics, especially left and right now, needs to go away, so that people can kind of heal a little bit and come back to the middle. Because the way that it's going right now, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And that's eventually there's going to be some sort of implosion there. And it's not just in politics. It's in regards to religion. It's in regards to lifestyle choices. It's in regards to the space industry, where you've got your pro and your anti-Musk. We didn't start off anti-Musk, but the way that the channel has evolved over time, the rabid nature of the people that we call the muskrats, and maybe that's a misnomer, but it certainly describes them well. You've got this defensive and irrational defense of something that's completely irrational, and really the only way that you can try to break through that veneer is to get as equally like enraged sometimes in how you're presenting your material, because it's the only way to get through to some of them.
Well, theater has always been part of politics, going back to Athens and Rome. I'm not going to talk your ear off on the reform of democracy because I'm writing a book about that right now. I can plug my book here. But yeah, I'm in the final stages of publishing my first book for grown-ups that I've ever written. I've written some children's storybooks, actually. But it's called No More Manifestos. And yeah, I am really of the opinion that the book contains a very thoroughgoing critique of the American Constitution and its consequences. And the American Constitution has indeed influenced the constitutions of all the democracies of Western Europe, and a lot of comparative analysis of places like China that I've talked about. But I mean, I think though it is, for me, in this instance, what we're talking about today, it's not as easy as saying more democracy would be better. Because I think you and I both know that the vast majority of the crowd, the vast majority of the voting public, they would support, they'd probably elect Elon Musk president of the United States, which is terrifying.
We'll have a lot of fights between now and then.
That's crazy. That's 2023 is not that far away. That'll be there before you know it. How many times have you had explosions with those
when you're on a
things?
rocket? I don't know, like quite a few. 6, maybe 5 or 6.
What are those like? What is it like when you watch it explode?
This is a test program.
Right.
We expect it to explode.
Of
so,
course.
It's weird if it doesn't explode, frankly.
Really?
Yeah. If current trends continue, if we if you plot the points on the curve of progress, then we should be doing regular orbital flights with a high probability of safe landing in 2 years.
And I just say, what qualifications do you have? So just to allude to my own personal history briefly, for many years I've been back and forth to China. I've been learning Chinese. I've also lived in Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, other countries in Asia, right? And I've been learning things, and I've been doing humanitarian work. I've been doing all kinds of things that lose money and don't earn money, but that do actually make me a brighter person or a more useful person, whatever you want to say. I could have spent those same years doing importing and exporting. I'm thinking about it right now because I'm going to run out of money sooner or later. I could have spent 10 years going to China and buying the cheapest crap made out of plastic for $5, bringing it to the United States of America and selling it on Amazon for $100 a piece instead. And that is one of the surest bets in economics. I can guarantee you I would have gotten rich doing that. If you are a white person who speaks Chinese and you can just travel back and forth between China and the United States and put junk made cheaply in China on Amazon, you will make money, and tons of people are doing it. And it just really sickens me to think that people would have more respect for my opinion and have more influence in politics just because of the number of dollars in my bank account. Like, oh, you've demonstrated that you can make a lot of money. Now we care about what you have to say. And to me, Elon Musk is like, it's this phenomenon in its purest form. This is all he wants to do is get money and have people talk about him behind his back because of who he's sleeping with and the car he's driving. I mean, this is a caricature of kind of the worst aspects morally of the 21st century American character, and the majority of people love it, and the majority of people support it, and the majority of people vote with it. So for me, even though I'm pro-democracy, this is, in this context, I'm a real cynic, or I'm real skeptical about democracy itself. Go on, yeah.
You can sleep a little bit easier because Musk can never be president of the United States. He wasn't born in the U.S., so that is off of the table, thank God.
Well, yes. What if Musk becomes president of South Africa? Would that be more... Boy, could he turn that around. Yeah, Canada is still an option for him, though. He could...
First thing we should assume is that we are very dumb. Things have obviously gotten way more smarter than the past. Way smarter. The most important thing, like I said, the most important mistake I see smart people making is assuming that they're smart. They're not.
Yeah. Don't buy into the Hyperloop. It is a disaster waiting to happen. You may as well strap a bomb to your chest and pull the pin. If you got money to spend it on something that's actually gonna help somebody to get better in life, not to get dead.
What happens next? So let me just ask you. I used to ask political activists this all the time. I'd interview political activists and say, where do you think you're going to be 5 years from now? What are you planning to accomplish in the next 5 years? In the case of Elon Musk, where is this going in the next 5 years? I don't want to narrow your answer here. I can think of some worst case scenarios. Go on.
The timeline that he set out for himself, that if he doesn't make it, then it's just more broken promises kicked down the road. He needs to get the Deer Moon ship circling the moon by the end of 2023. So, he's lined that up for himself. He was supposed to have cargo ships waiting for explorers on Mars by 2018. He missed 2018. He missed 2020. He's going to miss 22. If he doesn't get refueling in orbit lined up, and that's going to be a whole rigmarole as well. If he doesn't get that lined up, he's going to miss 2024. Then it's 24, 26, 29, 31. Those are the next windows. And every time he misses a window, his city of 1 million by 2050 gets, again, further and further kicked down the road. But if you take a look at some of the episodes that we've done, such as the one that deals with, his idea for getting people to Mars is in convoys of 1,000 ships. To get those 1,000 ships up into orbit, you need to launch between 7,000 and 12,000 tankers and supply ships to facilitate them while they're in orbit. Then they're all going to go off at the same time, like Battlestar Galactica. And you could Google that, Musk Battlestar Galactica. It'll tell you this whole thing about how he's planning on doing it. But we worked out the numbers on that, and it's like, you're into the $50 trillion as a grocery bill by the time you get all these ships up into orbit. Again, it's almost like nobody at SpaceX is doing logistics. Nobody understands the weight of water. Nobody understands the cost of launching groceries. Nobody seems to understand how much groceries people are going through, what space is going to take up. Where right now, the way things sit, we do not have life support systems capable of pulling off a Martian mission, because the ones that they have on the ISS are the best that there are, and they need constant upgrade, repair, and resupply. So if you take all this into consideration, I seriously, and our group doesn't think that that Starship gets much beyond LEO. They might maybe pull off Deer Moon. How they're getting people back down to the ground is still a bit of a mystery. But at the end of the day, people are starting to think that Starship will never become more than an LEO delivery system. And at that point, it's redundant, because how many Falcon Heavies are they selling on an annual basis, right? You don't have a large lift market to facilitate the need for such a ship, and their delivery system. The more that it gets refined, the more Starship starts to look like shuttle, and the Starship needs to look like shuttle if it's going to be a delivery.
That's what's physically possible. Go on.
Exactly. Like, if you take a look at the way the payload bay of
I know I've known this stuff since childhood. Go on. Sorry, but I like a lot of people. I learned a lot about how space travel works when I was a child. Go on. Even I can see what's wrong on the basis of what I read when I was 11 years old. I can see what's wrong with it. But yeah, okay.
Exactly. So you have Musk's Starship, which basically, if it's going to act as a payload delivery system, is going to open up like the villain's spaceship was in Moonraker, right, where it opens up like Jaws and then clamps down. Instead of it would actually be releasing it. But you take a look at the hinge points that such a system would require, and those are impossible. Everything would come down to one and the smallest hinge, that you could, because of the way that the skin would come up. Right, so it's much better if you open it up the way that Shuttle did, where you've got flat surfaces and straight surfaces where you can attach multiple hinges, or one very long, piano type hinge that has fewer points of failure, and it closes in on itself.
If we were going to make a list of reasons why his Starship program is impossible, it's actually going to pretty long list. And broadly speaking, he just went back to like the 1950s. He undid all the progress the space program had made, People switched from using liquid fuel to using solid fuel for a reason. We stopped having rockets land on their bum for a reason, like a straight up into like a cigar taking off and landing. We switched to, having the space shuttle with this, array of heat resistant tiles and landing flat, more like an airplane, for a reason. We had booster rockets separate for a reason. You just go through step by step all the distinctive aspects of why the space shuttle program worked the way it did, and why Russian rockets evolved in the way they did over the same period of time, and why Chinese rockets evolved the way they did. And Elon Musk is starting again in the 1950s and repeating errors that there was no reason to repeat.
Point where the people returning from orbit have to splash down in the ocean with parachutes.
Well, and look, the only thing I'd say is, again, not to insult the intelligence of people in your field, but 5 years is a long time. And in the last 5 years, like between 2015 and 2020, sorry, I realize we're actually doing this interview in 2021, but nevertheless, between 2015 and 2020, I think Elon Musk could have learned all this stuff. He could have learned the stuff I learned when I was an 11-year-old boy. I think he could have gained an appreciation for the history of the space program and why the space shuttle ended up the way it did. I do not mean that he would have had a PhD level knowledge of these things, but he could in broad brushstrokes understand that. And he didn't. He played video games. Even if you look at how ignorant he's remained since he began SpaceX, to me, that's more astonishing. Like if I start a pizza restaurant and the day I start it, I don't really know anything about the pizza business, but 5 years into it, I've learned all these lessons. He is a dude who started SpaceX, and in the last 5 years, he's remained so ignorant that when I look forward to the next 5 years, it's like, wow, I guess there's going to be more LSD and more getting famous rock stars pregnant and more playing video games and drug use and scandals and getting hauled into court for accusing someone of being a pedophile on Twitter. I don't have any specific predictions way, but to me, video games are part of the beating heart of his ignorance. They're part of the way that he produces and reproduces his own ignorance over time.
It's almost with some of the projects that he comes up with, like Hyperloop, like Starship, like Cybertruck, it's almost like the actual geniuses in the board of that particular company are like, okay, you need to get this guy out of our hair so we can get our work done. Let him do something stupid, okay? That little napkin drawing that he did with the truck, make him work on that and just get him off the factory floor so that we don't have to trip over him anymore and worry about getting fired because we've upset his feelings.
Yeah.
Right, and that's how you wind up. That's how you wind up with a Cybertruck. That's how you wind up with a Starship. That's how you wind up with air skates and a vacuum, for Christ's sake.
Well, and meanwhile, I think the only company we can see this with is his car company, Tesla. But it seems like all the brilliant, hardworking, honest people, they quit or get fired one after another. And the people who remain and the people he recruits and the people he grooms for leadership are these kind of unthinking yes men. They're these people who flatter him and who fit into his ideology. So, culturally, that's very different from one milieu to the next. But I think we saw that with Tesla, and I have to assume with Hyperloop that's the case, because there's this just mind-blowing incompetence at every level of the Hyperloop progress. Pardon me, at every level of the Hyperloop project, there's this mind-blowing incompetence. So I think there must be something similar where, the ignorance and arrogance of Elon Musk at the top of SpaceX somehow shapes, forms, and reforms the other people in the organization. And again, you keep alluding to there being other geniuses in the room, but I'm guessing the geniuses quit or get fired. The same way that you documented yourself at Tesla. Go on.
Yeah, and you're seeing that at Neuralink now as well.
Right. Yeah.
Like of the original founders, less than half of them are there.
I don't even want to talk about Neuralink. That's so depressing. Oh my God. And look, hey, I asked you about the next 5 years. It can get worse. Elon Musk wants to make a nuclear reactor that will hover in midair and act like a man-made sun. I can see ways that would go wrong in the next 5 years. He could really.
I don't see much going right with it, that's for sure.
This could end up being at, cartoonish levels of supervillainy. And well, look, great talking to you. This is the first time we talked. I made some YouTube videos shutting him out and so on. And, I'm a fan of his channel. Those of you who don't already know, this is Common Sense Skeptic. There's a link in the description. The YouTube channel, I should just clarify, it is not just one person. He's alluded to it several times. There were a group of people who are remaining anonymous. And I think it's fair to say, your channel is not just debunking Elon Musk. I assume, you alluded to there was a point in the past where you were worried about solar roadways, some other things, and you could move on to other issues.
The idea is that we're supposed to be covering as many different aspects of technology and space travel as possible, but it's just Musk is a cornucopia. He is on all the different aspects, every arm and leg of technology here right now, and that's how he keeps himself in the news. But the problem is, as we point out over and over again, many of them are houses of cards, or there's so much information there that people haven't been exposed to that we try to distill down into bite-sized pieces so that you don't need anything more than common sense and skepticism to actually be able to know there is something wrong there.
Well, and symbols are dangerous things. Elon Musk has become a symbol of progress. He is influencing the way people think about science and technology and the future of our society. I don't think of this as stand-up comedy. I don't think of this as just having a laugh at Elon Musk for his own sake. I actually think ultimately this is a very important political and ultimately ethical and moral challenge.